There must be something in the water at Ubisoft at the moment. Not usually known for creating RPGs, they absolutely blew us away with South Park: The Stick of Truth, and Child of Light follows suit, being yet another joyful experience that also looks wonderful from start to finish. And there's something deceptive about that glorious UbiArt engine at first. Maybe it's because it was previously seen in Rayman Legends, but for the first moments, you don't realise you're actually playing a deep RPG and not a platform game. There are elements of a platformer here, sure, and you are moving around an environment presented like a beautiful watercolour painting, but make no mistake, this is a role-playing game through and through, despite some rudimentary platform-based puzzles here and there, and as such, is a lovely surprise. But I can't gloss over the visuals so quickly because this is, without question, one of the prettiest games I've ever had the pleasure of playing. You've probably seen screenshots, maybe even videos like this, but nothing does the game justice like playing it and seeing it in person. It's a breath of fresh air, and the characters are rendered as though they're straight out of a Disney film. There's never a single moment you won't be in awe of how great it looks. Transitions between levels and areas are swift, and there are barely enough loading screens to mention, but each locale has a distinct visual flair to it, whether you're traversing a dark underground lava cave or a village full of mouse people that has the hustle and bustle to match. And the audio is spectacular as well. There's a musical theme to Child of Light that repeats throughout, but the orchestral accompaniment really matches the visuals well, touching on melancholia, desperation and joy. Voice acting is used sparingly, however, as most of the dialogue is left for you to read, but when it does, there are some odd pronunciation kinks which is possibly in service of something wholly unique to Child of Light. Everything rhymes. I'm not just talking bits and bobs here, either. Absolutely every piece of written text or spoken dialogue rhymes, apart from the descriptions in the menus. It's tremendously amusing at times and shows some bothersome writing at others, but it's interesting nonetheless. Certain words are eschewed in favour of quirkier, less common terms, and whether the occasional instance of awkward wording irks you is purely down to personal preference, and while I liked it, it isn't without fault. On that note, the writing isn't perfect either. The story is like a Disney princess tale, with you playing as Aurora, a young girl who is trying to save her dying father. In truth, there are some oddities in the narrative and some blanks that are never fully filled in. For example, the story starts with Aurora falling asleep and finding herself in Lemuria, the place the entire game is set. Her father, stricken with grief, falls ill himself, and thus the tale turns on its head, with Aurora journeying to save herself and Lemuria along the way. Ultimately, however, the quest is to find celestial objects and kill the bad guys. It becomes a rite of passage adventure really, mostly dealing with themes of abandonment and loss, and although it's presented in a very palatable manner, it's hard not to feel for Aurora's plight. Child of Light is well paced, and you'll meet new characters and party members at regular intervals. The best thing about this is that despite there being no traditionally labelled class system, every single party member has personality and brings something different to the battle. As to the Child of Light, Aurora battles with a sword and light magic, obviously powerful against dark creatures. Other characters have various different skills. One late in the game is a veritable tank when it comes to physical attacks, but has no magic to speak of. Finn, the bearded chap you may have seen before, is the mage, and you'd be wise to spend his skills quickly getting the Lightning All skill, whereas other characters are primarily able to buff one another or debuff the enemy. This is vitally important because the enemies are often elemental and will use numerous irritating techniques such as slowing you down, speeding themselves up, shielding themselves, etc. In fact, Child of Light mostly reminds me of when Final Fantasies were good, and that's a very good thing. The battle system is complicated to explain, but actually fairly intuitive and easy to get to grips with. On a very basic level, there are two stages to the turn-based active time battle on offer. There will be a bar on the bottom of the screen displaying which stage every character is at, enemies included. The blue section is the largest part and is the wait phase. During this stage you can plan what you intend to do while also feeling the ramifications of previous turns and what the enemy has done to you. At the end of the wait period, you will stop at the cast phase. Here you can choose what you want to do, be it defend instantly or attack. Each attack or magic-based skill has a casting period varying from medium to very long. Obviously, the more powerful the skill, the longer it takes to cast. During the cast phase, you can be interrupted if hit, which causes you to be set back to the waiting phase, which you obviously don't want, but you can do the same for your enemy. So if you have a character who is particularly fast at casting, you can interrupt the enemy even if you're facing a boss. If that doesn't sound complicated enough, throughout your journey you have a glowing ball of light called Igniculus with you. Using the right analog stick you move him around the environment and make him focus on enemies by holding the trigger, which slows down their timeline. This adds immensely to the tactical nature of the battles, giving you more than one thing to focus on at any given time. Maybe if you slow down that boss enough, your slower caster can get their spell out without interruption. Elsewhere, there are skill trees for every single character, with each offering 3 routes. By the time I'd completed the game, I had every character around level 47, with about 75% of their skill trees completed. You'll level up an awful lot after you get into the game, and thankfully, even if you don't use them in a battle, other party members will level up too. There are also collectible items that immediately add points to specific stats, such as health, strength, magic defense, etc. You don't have to worry about weapons, but there is a crafting system called Oculi. Each character has 3 Oculi slots, all of which buff them in some way. 3 of the same Oculi crafted together will level it up until you are creating brilliant versions of them. But it's not all perfect. It's far too easy, in fact, and I never saw a game over sign once during the entire playthrough, and I only ever had to revive a character in battle about 4 times. Of course there's a hard mode, and I'd recommend that seasoned RPG fans make use of that from the start. Also, the enemy design is a little lackluster. Spiders, winged beasts, ghostly apparitions and the like are everywhere in the open world. You can actually ignore a lot of them, but to fight them you can approach from behind to get a surprise attack, though they can do the same to you. The problem is that there's not enough variation. Having a spider glow red and be on fire, because he's a fire element spider, so use water against him, is about as varied as it gets, and even the bosses are very similar in nature, aside a few. It's so pleasing to see a game this gorgeous actually back that up with impressive gameplay, as long as you're a fan of the genre that is, an impressively deep RPG that will actually bother to make each party member feel different in combat while telling a story that most will relate to in some way or another. Child of Light is full of whimsy, yet also full of heart, and it never gets boring. Although it's a bit too easy and doesn't offer very much post-game content, this is a surprisingly brilliant game that tries something new and succeeds way more than it fails. Child of Light is full of character and personality, and it's probably one of the best looking games you'll play this year, relying on design instead of power. Give it a go, you'll find it very hard not to fall in love with Aurora's Tale and the land of Lemuria.